All the updates coming in. Leaders of G20 nations are engaging in talks on the sidelines of the New Delhi Summit. A number of bilaterals have taken place. PM Modi has also been able to hold a number of meetings over the weekend. He also held talks with his Australian counterpart, Anthony Albanese, on the sidelines. Now, Albanese, while posting on platform X, noted that he had good bilateral discussions with Prime Minister Modi. The two leaders held talks on concluding the comprehensive economic cooperation agreement between India and Australia. Albanese also said that the G20 summit under India's presidency has been successful. India and Australia entered into an interim trade agreement last year, which eliminated tariffs on more than 85% of Australian exports to India. Negotiations are now on for a comprehensive partnership. During his visit to India this year, the Australian leader said he is hopeful that the deal could be inked by the end of the year.
Meanwhile, he also said that the prospects of inking the FTA with the EU are better this year than next year. Talks on the deal opened in 2018, but differences have remained over greater EU market access for Australian farm products.
All right, we're now cutting across to visuals that are coming in from Rajghat at the Indian national capital. G20 leaders and the heads of delegations are arriving at Rajghat to pay their respect to Mahatma Gandhi. Now, at the venue, they will also sign on the peace wall inside the leaders' lounge.
Right. There you can see the visuals that are coming in from Rajghat. There you can see Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the WHO chief there. Dignitaries have started to arrive at the Rajghat. As Shivan mentioned, there are some live performances that have also been planned. There will be a live performance of Mahatma Gandhi's devotional songs, and the leaders here will also lay a wreath at Mahatma Gandhi's Samadhi.
There are a lot of things that are lined up on day two. Of course, it's all going to start right here at Rajghat as all the dignitaries arrive one by one, and they are here to pay their respects to Father of the Nation, Mahatma Gandhi. As they arrive one by one, we see them after paying their respects to Mahatma Gandhi. There we see the Indian Prime Minister receiving our guests.
Clearly, rain hasn't dampened the G20
Definitely
spirit.
not. Delhi has seen a lot of rain since last night, but no spirits have been dampened for that.
There you have Prime Minister Narendra Modi welcoming Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, WHO chief. The dignitaries, they are arriving at the Rajghat. These are the live visuals that we're getting in from Indian national capital, New Delhi, where G20 leaders, heads of delegations, they're arriving at Rajghat to pay their respect to Mahatma Gandhi.
Indian Prime Minister receiving all the dignitaries one by one as they arrive at Rajghat. They are here to pay their respects to Mahatma Gandhi. We can see there has been a lot of rain in New Delhi since last night, but definitely no change in plans, no change in schedule, no delay in timings. Everything is moving as per schedule. 8 a.m. is when the first event was planned for day two, and we're seeing it happen right on schedule. The leaders will now, after Rajghat, they will head towards the Bharat Mandapam region once again.
There you can see Ngozi Nkoho-Iweala being greeted by Prime Minister Narendra Modi at Rajghat. Now, for more on this, we're now being joined by Dr. Malcolm Davis, Senior Analyst in Defence Strategy and Capability at Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, my first question to you. The bilateral talks concluded the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement between India and Australia. We saw that. Talk to us about how this will impact trade and relations between the two nations.
Well, it's obviously an important agreement to liberalise trade, to free up opportunities to improve and enhance and expand trade going forward. I think that the specifics probably do need to be worked out. I think what you see with any G20 conference is a number of high-level strategic policy agreements that then need to be boiled down into some specific practical steps going forward. So I think that the details need to be worked out, but these are positive times for Australia and India in so many ways, not just in terms of trade, but in terms of defence cooperation, in terms of foreign policy coordination. And I think that from India's perspective in hosting the G20, this has been a major success for India.
Dr. Davis, Prime Minister Albanese called the summit under India's presidency a complete success. He's announced that it was successful from day one. How much do you feel the outcomes from day one will impact relations between China and the Western Bloc? We've already seen the announcement of the economic corridor. How do you see and how do you feel China would be responding to this, with Xi Jinping very much there in Beijing, not here, not attending this in person, and seeing this kind of an announcement being made by other Western leaders?
Is certainly coming out as essentially what could be seen as an own goal, to use a football term, for
right.
China. Essentially, by Xi not turning up, Modi has been able to lead the summit and establish a whole series of agreements that benefit India, strengthen India's position in the world as opposed to China's. I think that India is now in a very good position to essentially lead the global south rather than China. So I think that China, and particularly and specifically Xi, has made a mistake here of strategic significance in not turning up to the summit. And I don't see this summit necessarily improving the relationship between China and the rest of the world. I think, in fact, probably China is more isolated than ever.
It's more of an own goal, like you just said. I think, do you feel Xi Jinping would be sort of double guessing his decision of not attending the summit in person? Do you feel there could have been a different outcome, or do you feel that he was kind of anticipating this move and thought it better not to attend at all?
I think he must be reflecting on the wisdom of his choice here. He must be thinking, maybe I should have gone, things might have turned out differently. And the very fact, obviously, that Putin can't attend for the fact that he's under an international arrest warrant means that really India is now in the best position to lead the global south. And they need to capitalize on that. They can't afford to lose that momentum. So I think that, it's China's own goal. They've made that mistake, and now they're going to have to live with that.
Right, absolutely, sir. Now, of course, the economic corridor, it's perceived as a rival to the Belt and Road Initiative, which left several African nations in deep debt as well. Now, that being said, do you feel the economic corridor, this will prove to be an effective strategy and it will be welcomed in the global south?
I mean, it depends on how it's delivered. I think that in the same way the Belt and Road Initiative hasn't really been that effective given the substandard nature of Chinese investments in certain countries. I think that, if the economic corridor that's coming out of the G20 wants to succeed, it has to do better in a practical sense than the BRI has done. But I think it's an important step at a geopolitical level to counterbalance and offset China's attempts to influence other countries. And we need to be aware that the Belt and Road Initiative, the Chinese initiative, is not about win-win. It's about win for Beijing. It's about China gaining access to critical resources, to geostrategically important locations, and to control and influence the politics of host nations. The economic corridor coming out of the G20 has to be different. It has to be a fair democratic process that encourages the growth of democracy as a basis going forward.
Right. Dr. Davis, thank you so much for joining us on the show with your insights on this.
Thank you very much.
Right.
All right, now back to the live visuals that we're getting from Rajghat in New Delhi. World leaders have started to gather at Rajghat here, of course. The latest we saw was Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi being greeted by the Prime Minister. We'll just get you all the visuals that we're getting.
You know, Joe Biden hasn't made his way yet, but yesterday at the dinner, he was delayed by quite a lot of time. He's not here yet. Of course, other leaders making their way as planned.
Right, and that is Mauritius Prime Minister there.
Had a bit of a trip there on the stairs, but of course, thankfully.
It's a rainy day,
yes.
Shivan.
It has been raining in New Delhi ever since last night, and of course, no plans have been dampened, and schedule is very much on course. And 8 a.m. is when all the delegates were expected to assemble at Rajghat to pay their respects to Mahatma Gandhi. And there they are, arriving one by one. They will be greeted by the Indian Prime Minister as they arrive at the venue. And this is before they head towards Bharat Mandapam for the next session on One Future.
Right, there you can see that's the Mauritius Prime Minister. He is heading towards Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at Rajghat. It's going to be, from the looks of it, it's going to be an action-packed day 2 of the G20 Summit as well. As we mentioned earlier, the third summit session will get underway in a short while from now.
That's Praveen Kumar Jugnauth, Prime Minister Mauritius, being greeted by the Prime Minister. He gets his stole. Prime Minister has a bit of exchange of words. This was very interesting to watch yesterday when the session had just started. Now, you know, most of the announcements have been made. So you know what the course of the G20 summit and what kind of relations most nations are having with each other. But yesterday when they were arriving one by one, it was very interesting to note. And of course, Siddhant, our correspondent on ground, was noting their body language very closely.
Absolutely. The camaraderie was on full display, yes. Of course.
Long exchange of words here with the Mauritian Prime Minister. And there we go. There's the handshake. And off he goes. Prime Minister waiting one by one for all the guests to arrive.
And that's Mark Rutte, the Netherlands Prime Minister.
Right. They had a good handshake yesterday as well. There you go, has a big smile on his face, walking towards the Prime Minister. He needs to bend down for that. He's a tall man.
So I've seen that you give a lot of attention to detail here, and I also like that the Prime Minister has really taken the time to...
They're still holding hands.
Right, now to familiarize the leaders and the guests with the surroundings and the decor and all the arrangements that have been made as well.
And it's very interesting to note how leaders greet each other. Body language really tells a lot, because this is essentially what's going to trickle down to relations between the two nations. So it's a big deal. I genuinely get very interested, watching how leaders meet each other. Is that the Singaporean Prime Minister? Just confirming. That's the Singapore Prime Minister, Lee Hsien Loong, making his way now. These are the G20 invitees. Bangladesh, Egypt, Mauritius, Netherlands, Nigeria, Oman, Singapore, Spain, UAE. And of course, a Singapore Prime Minister makes his way. Walking right towards, he's checking out what's all that, all the decorations.
I'm just waiting for your analysis on the handshake, so I'm not going to say much here.
It's a shorter walk today. You know, yesterday I really saw them taking several turns before they finally made their way to the Indian Prime Minister. But today it is definitely a shorter walk, and thankfully, because the ground is definitely wet, it's been raining, and here they are to pay their respects to Mahatma Gandhi one by one. All of them. And I think there is a commonality in what the Prime Minister is explaining to all of them with the backdrop that is there. Right, there we see the eternal flame, and my life is my message, Mahatma Gandhi, the quote. We see the statue, of course, with the chakra wheel. All things traditional, all things known for Mahatma Gandhi has always been synonymous with his quotes, his message to the world, and all the leaders are here to pay their respects there.
And we're about to see some live performances on his favorite devotional songs as well in a short while from now, once all the dignitaries and the leaders are at the Rajghat here.
The backdrop where the Prime Minister is interacting with all the leaders as he greets them. It's from the Sabarmati Ashram, the Mahatma Gandhi Ashram at Sabarmati in Ahmedabad in Gujarat. And they have a visual of that, of course, and the Prime Minister is explaining to all the leaders why it is there. And here, of course, we are, we see dignitaries crossing one by one. And
right, we're also, in a short while from now, we'll also see a tree planting ceremony at the Bharat Mandapam.
That is expected to happen
Plaza
at Bharat
well.
Mandapam.
Right, in a short while from now.
Yes, all the delegates will move back to the Bharat Mandapam for the next session. And day 2 seems a little lighter on the delegates as well, doesn't it? There are some bilaterals.
Day 1 really set the tone for what we could expect going forward, and now I think we're very much in the groove of things.
Yeah. I think day 1 was a bit too action-packed.
I loved it. It was amazing. And I'm sure you did too, since you've been decoding their handshakes and their body language.
Absolutely, but it was very interesting to see how they all greeted each other ahead of the dinner yesterday as well. All the leaders made their way one by one. Biden was rather late, but as he is today, he is a bit off schedule. But Biden hasn't made his way yet.
You're right, absolutely. I think Prime Minister Modi's address yesterday really set a very positive tone for the 2 days
including
summit.
the African Union before the session even started. There was such a statement from India's side on how it is very much the voice of the global south, and African Union is now part of G20. I might as well call it G21 now.
Right. Now, I mean, he really emphasized on the security situation, inclusivity, bridging the north-south divide as well. So I think that really set the tone for the rest of the proceedings for the day, and of course today as well.
Of course, inclusivity, something India has been speaking about since the beginning, and they proved it yesterday.
Right, absolutely. Of course, with the Delhi declaration as well, which is being seen as a big win. As I mentioned earlier as well, the chances of reaching a consensus, it seemed rather low, but India managed to get all world leaders on the same page.
Leaders arriving at Rajghat, where they will be greeted by the Indian Prime Minister. There we go. They're, of course, making their way inside, and there will be some. There's the Indian Prime Minister waiting with the stole.
Let's just also, just to familiarize you with the schedule here, let's just tell you about the events that have been scheduled for day 2 of the G20 Summit. As we mentioned earlier, these are the visuals that we're getting from the capital, Indian capital, New Delhi. G20 leaders and heads of delegations that are arriving here at the Rajghat to pay their respects to Mahatma Gandhi, a venue where they will also sign on the peace wall inside the leaders' lounge. And apart from this, there will be a live performance, as I mentioned earlier, of Mahatma Gandhi's devotional songs. The leaders will then lay a wreath at Mahatma Gandhi's Samadhi.
Yeah, that's expected to be 9 and 9:20 a.m. local time. And,
and then about 9:40 to 10:15 a.m. the leaders will then go back to the Bharat Mandapam. They'll start arriving there. And about at 10:15 to 10:30 a.m. as I mentioned, there'll be a tree planting ceremony that will take place at the Bharat Mandapam South Plaza. And after that, we will see the third session of the summit titled One Future, which will be held at the venue, culminating the adoption of the New Delhi Leaders Declaration as well, which we saw yesterday.
So it's an action-packed day. They were scheduled to arrive at 8:15. They've, of course, started arriving much earlier, since about 8. itself, and we see leaders arriving one by one, and several delegates along with them. It's not just the states of head of states, but there are several other delegates who are arriving, and of course the Prime Minister is greeting all of them one-to-one personally ahead of them giving their respects to Mahatma Gandhi and the laying of the wreath, which is expected to happen at 9 a.m.
That is Nigerian President Bola Tinubu as well. There you can see at the Rajghat now.
Bola Tinubu has, of course, there is a lot happening in Nigeria, which was expected to affected.
Nigerian President Bola Tinubu, in fact, came here with a rather large delegation.
Yeah, he was the first one to arrive.
He was the first one to arrive.
Right, of course, we are going to continue with all the coverage coming in from the G20 Summit. Day 2 is upon us, and here, of course, the Prime Minister is greeting all of them. And next up, we will have the laying of the wreath ahead of all the leaders paying their respects to Mahatma Gandhi.
Right.